For many years, when I came up to the Catskills, to Roscoe, New York, I would always stop by the Detty Fly Shop, and I used to watch Mary Detty Clark tying, and in her inimitable Catskill style, and she was always helpful with tips and everything. And then early on there too, I was fortunate to learn how to tie traditional Catskill style dries from a gentleman by the name of Larry Duckwall. Now, Larry, I don't believe, is probably not with us anymore. Haven't kept track over the years. This was 30 years ago, I guess, that I learned the style from Larry. Larry had the distinction of being a well-known Catskill tyer, and he learned directly from Elsie Darby. So certainly a third generation, basically, of Catskill tyers lineage. So we're going to tie a traditional light Cahill today. I tend to fish light Cahills more in sizes 14 and 16, but we're going to tie a size 12 today. It's a bit easier to see what we're doing. I'm using a fine yellow thread. This is the 14-aught AU that's no longer available, but Vivas and some others have very thin, strong threads that are worth checking out. I find them to be, I haven't seen anything I like quite as much as the old AU thread, but what you can't get, you can't use. I like the fine thread because you can basically make a fly quite durable by taking more wraps. For tailing, we're going to be using a rooster spade feather. We're going to get a nice group of long tailing fibers there. Pull them off. Bunch them together. And measure our tail at full hook length. Tie them in the hook bend. Reach up, take one wrap of thread underneath to cock the tail slightly. And wrap up over the butts. And we'll take the thread to portion 1/3 of the way, 1/3 the length of the hook shank back from the eye. We're going to be using the natural wood duck flank feather. You'll want to look at the feather carefully, find where some of the barb fibers start to get noticeably shorter on the sides of the feather. Shorter feathers you're going to want to pull off. The other side of the feather, same thing. Get rid of the fluff and those shorter fibers. And then the easiest way, the way Larry taught me to do the wing, you use one good sized feather. The smaller feathers are good for smaller flies. The larger ones for the bigger ones, of course. You'll see a very fine stem. You take your scissors, keep a very small gap so you can push the scissor blades in on either side of that stem and clip it out, and you'll come down just a little eyeball, a little better than hook length, so you have no stem in your feather. And you'll take your feather and you'll start to stroke all the fibers together from butt to tip to start to bunch them up. You do that a few times, you turn them over, you put the shiny side, as it were, toward the front of the fly, out toward the hook eye. Once you have those bunched, you can start to measure your wing. Just a shade long. Again, I like the wing to be the same height as the entire length of the hook. Pinch them in, make a pinch wrap, tighten pulling straight up. Again, fine thread, I can take quite a number of wraps without building a buck and lock that wing in. Pull the butts up, hold them back at an angle, and snip them at an angle, and then tie down over that remaining little tapered portion of the feather butt. Reach over the front of the hook with your thumb and index finger, pull the entire wing back, and start wrapping tight to the base of the wing and make a nice dam of thread. I have to take more wraps with a very thin thread. If you use 6/0, you don't have to take 15 wraps as I'll typically do. Stood up, and then you can turn your vise a little bit and fan them a little bit so you can get if you have them fanned out, it's easier to divide them and get them even from one side of the fly to the other. Come up in the middle, grab them in 2 bunches, and you've pretty much got what you need as far as making your wings even. Hold them, your thread's in front of the wing. You come up between the wings and go from front to rear and down behind, and then take one complete wrap of thread around behind. Okay? And you come up behind, cross over to the front between the wings, and then take a complete wrap in front. So your wings are now divided into 2 bunches. Now you're going to post each bunch of wings. For posting, thread control is very important. You want a short amount of thread out of the tip of your bottom. Hold the wing that's away from you and wrap the base tight to the base. Gentle pressure, 3 or 4 wraps, whatever it takes to get those fibers to behave. And then without putting much tension on the thread, take a wrap around the butts, around the hook shank. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. 2, 3, 4, and 1 wrap around. Now, you can get in there. We've got 2 nice even wings. Get in and cut a couple of stray fibers. You usually end up with a couple of short fibers still in there sometimes that have been broken off, you know, on the bird. Wood duck's very strong. It's one thing I was always afraid to yank on them and get them in position properly. And Larry Duckwall said, hey, wood duck is very strong. You can't do this with mallard flank dyed to imitate wood duck, but you can yank on them pretty good and pull them back into shape where you want them with natural wood duck. And then for durability, I like to take 1 drop of cement and put right between the 2 wings right at the base. Go. There's our Catskill winged fly. Okay. We'll take the thread then wrap back, and I'm going to get out my light Cahill dubbing blend, which is typical of my blends. We take the natural fur that's called for in the pattern, in this case a buff red fox, which and I add antron. I'll take my little sample here and pull out the longer guard hairs that I can see. Make it double a little easier for a fine body. Take a little wonder wax, put that on the thread, and work the rest into my tip and thumb. Start spinning the dubbing on the thread for the body. The natural buff fox isn't quite the creamy white that a lot of pre-made dubbing is sold in and called light Cahill. The natural fly has a bit more color definition than just a plain creamy white. We get a nice spun on there tight, work it back, start our body. Just a tiny bit, if I can get rid of those guard hairs. This particular batch of dubbing I blended up, we got quite a few guard hairs trying to get there's some finer guard hairs in the buff colored fur on the fox skin. And you can go in now and trim off. You've still got some wild guard heads. We're using Charlie Collins' lovely New York grown dry fly hackle, which has long been a favorite of mine. I've been tying with Charlie's hackle for 30 years, and it's pretty much the only kind I buy anymore. Beautiful natural colors. We clip off the little bit of webbiness at the very bottom of the feather, and you strip some barbs off up to the point where the stem gets very thin, which still gives you, with Charlie's hackle, a lot of usable feather there. And we'll tie that in. I learned a bit on dry flies as well from George Harvey. George recommended that you tie your dry fly hackle in with the shiny side toward the tail of the fly, the dull side, the concave side, toward the hook, because the stress put on the hackle in fishing, other than the fish chewing on it, which chews on the whole fly of course, is when you're picking the fly up off the water. And that way those cupped fibers, you're working against the strength of the fiber and helps the fly keep its shape a little bit. The Dettes, Darby's, both classic, Catskill tires, always tied their hackle in the other way with a shiny side toward the eye. You can do it either way. They both work, they both make a nice fly. So choose to go whichever way you want. Tie that stem in front, clip it off, and then we'll finish tying it down. Make a little bit of a thread bed there for the hackle to be wrapped on. Take our hackle pliers, break down any resistance in that stem. Got a couple of fibers we're going to cock back. I'm going to clip those off right now. And we start to wrap our hackle. Nice and tight, one in front of the other. 3 to 4 wraps. 3 is going to do it fine for this fly behind the wing, and then come in front. The wing fibers back out of the way. And we'll do 3 wraps in front of the wing. Tie that down nice and securely. Two extra hackle fibers there, get that caught. Put that down and whip finish. up the twine, and there we have a nice sparsely tied traditional Catskill light Cahill dry fly.